Throughout the history of Pokémon, there have always been creatures wrapped in mystery, beings so rare that their very existence was questioned by players across the world. While legendary Pokémon stood tall in their respective regions, visible and powerful, another group existed in the shadows of code and playground whispers. These were the mythical Pokémon, creatures that blurred the line between digital reality and childhood myth. Tonight, we drift through the quiet history of every mythical Pokémon ever created, and the best place to start is where the entire concept first appeared in secret, where a small creature named Mew was hidden inside 300 bytes of leftover space. In the earliest days of Pokémon Red and Green, somewhere in the final weeks before the games shipped to stores across Japan in 1996, a programmer named Shigeki Morimoto made a decision that would change the franchise forever. The debugging process had finished, leaving exactly 300 bytes of empty space in the cartridge's memory, and while Nintendo had explicitly instructed the development team not to touch the code any further, Morimoto quietly added one final Pokémon into that tiny gap. This creature was Mew, a design he had sketched just weeks earlier, and its inclusion was so secretive that even Nintendo's management remained unaware of its presence in the finished game for several months afterward. The hidden nature of Mew's programming meant that no standard gameplay method existed to obtain it, creating the perfect conditions for genuine mystery to flourish in schoolyards and gaming magazines. Children across Japan began sharing rumors about this psychic-type creature, some claiming it lived beneath a truck near the SS Anne, others insisting complex button combinations would summon it in specific locations. These stories spread with remarkable speed, taking on lives of their own, and the beautiful part was that Mew genuinely existed inside the game's code, making every rumor feel tantalizingly possible, even when the methods described were completely fictional. The first official Mew distribution occurred in May of 1996 through a promotional event organized by Korokoro magazine, where nearly 80,000 players sent in postcards hoping to receive this mythical creature. The 20 winners had to physically mail their game cartridges to Nintendo, where Mew would be added to their save files before the cartridges were returned. This physical, almost ritualistic process of sending away your game and waiting for its return added a layer of magic that modern Wi-Fi distributions can never quite replicate. And before you drift off, maybe tap subscribe for more gentle videos and let me know where you're listening from tonight. Mew's design philosophy centered entirely around the concept of genetic potential and primordial origins, with every element reflecting the idea that this small pink creature served as the ancestor to all other Pokémon species. Its appearance drew inspiration from embryonic forms, giving it a fetal quality that suggested beginnings rather than endings, while its name derived from the word mutation, connecting it directly to themes of DNA and evolutionary possibility. The decision to make Mew's base stats exactly 100 across all 6 categories created perfect balance, suggesting a creature that existed before specialization occurred, before Pokémon diversified into the countless forms that would eventually populate the world. This stat distribution of 100 in every category gave Mew remarkable versatility in battle, allowing trainers to build it as a special attacker, a physical sweeper, a defensive wall, or a support Pokémon depending on their needs and preferences. Combined with its ability to learn every teachable move in the game through technical machines, Mew became the ultimate blank canvas, a Pokémon without limitations or predetermined roles. This flexibility made it feel truly legendary, truly beyond the normal rules that governed other creatures, and its 600 base stat total would become the standard template that almost every future mythical Pokémon would follow in generations to come. The mythology surrounding Mew extends far beyond its gameplay mechanics into the deeper lore of the Pokemon universe, where scientists in Cinnabar Island's laboratory discovered traces of Mew's DNA in a shrine deep within the jungles of Guyana. These geneticists used that ancient DNA to create Mewtwo, a clone designed to be stronger and more powerful than the original, and this relationship between ancestor and artificial descendant became the emotional core of the first Pokemon movie. The film explored themes of identity and purpose, asking whether a created being could have the same value as a natural one, and millions of children watched these two psychic types battle while grappling with surprisingly mature philosophical questions. As we drift a little deeper tonight into the world of mythical Pokemon, the second creature in this exclusive category makes its appearance in the form of Celebi, a grass and psychic type that appeared during Generation 2's release in 1999. Where Mew represented the ancient past and primordial creation, Celebi embodied the flow of time itself, with the unique ability to travel backward and forward through temporal streams while carrying seeds from different eras in the small head ornament that resembled antennae or perhaps delicate sprouts. This time, Guardian lived in Ilex Forest within the Johto region, a place where ancient traditions and modern life intersected quietly, and players who received Celebi through special distributions could trigger an event involving a time-traveling shrine. Celebi's design draws from multiple sources of inspiration, blending the appearance of plant sprites from various mythologies with the aesthetic of small onions or flower buds that have not yet opened fully. The creature's large blue eyes give it an innocent, almost childlike quality that contrasts beautifully with the enormous responsibility of protecting the timeline, and its tiny body measuring just 2 feet tall makes it feel approachable rather than intimidating, despite its incredible powers. The color palette of pale green and soft white suggests new growth and fresh beginnings, connecting it visually to themes of spring and renewal that complement its role as a forest guardian quite perfectly. In battle, Celebi shares Mew's perfectly balanced stat distribution of 100 across all categories, giving it that same versatile quality that allows trainers to customize its role based on personal preference and team composition. Its typing of grass and psychic creates interesting strategic possibilities, providing resistance to ground, water, fighting, and psychic type attacks, while unfortunately creating significant vulnerabilities to bug, ghost, fire, ice, flying, poison, and dark type moves. This defensive fragility means Celebi requires careful positioning and thoughtful team support to function effectively in competitive battles. And before we drift any further, maybe tap subscribe for more calming videos and tell me where you're joining from tonight. The fourth generation movie, titled Celebi Voice of the Forest, explored this Pokemon's connection to nature and its role as a protector of woodland environments, showing how the creature's time-traveling abilities allowed it to ensure forests remained healthy across multiple eras simultaneously. In the film, a villainous trainer attempts to capture and corrupt Celebi, using its powers for personal gain, and the resulting conflict demonstrates how easily temporal manipulation could upset the delicate balance between past, present, and future. These themes of environmental protection and the consequences of interfering with natural time flow resonated strongly with audiences who had grown up watching the series, adding emotional depth to what could have been a simple adventure story. The method of obtaining Celebi in the original Gold and Silver games tells its own quiet story about how mythical Pokemon distributions have evolved over the decades since those early days. Initially, Japanese players could receive Celebi through a mobile phone adapter system that connected the Game Boy Color to cellular networks, allowing special events to be downloaded directly into their cartridges. This technology felt incredibly futuristic at the turn of the millennium, creating a sense that you were receiving something magical through invisible signals traveling through the air, and the fact that this system never launched in Western markets made Celebi even more mythical and unreachable for English-speaking players during that generation. Years would pass before Celebi became accessible outside of Japan, with the first international distributions occurring through special events at retailers and through download codes provided with Pokemon Coliseum bonus discs in some regions. These methods created their own challenges and frustrations, requiring players to either attend specific stores during limited time windows or purchase additional games just to access a single Pokemon. The difficulty of obtaining Celebi only enhanced its mystique, making each successful acquisition feel like a genuine achievement rather than a simple checkbox to complete. And there's something undeniably special about that era when mythical Pokemon felt truly scarce and precious. Moving forward through time in our gentle exploration, the third generation introduced Jirachi, a steel and psychic type Pokemon whose entire existence centers around the concept of wishes and the quiet hope that lives inside all of us. This small creature spends 999 years in hibernation, sealed away inside a crystalline cocoon, awakening for just 7 days once every millennium when a comet passes through the night sky above the Hoenn region. During those brief moments of consciousness, Jirachi possesses the power to grant any wish written on the 3 tags hanging from its star-shaped head, though the actual mechanics and limitations of this wish-granting ability remain intentionally vague throughout the series. Jirachi's design immediately communicates its cosmic origins and celestial nature through visual elements that reference stars, sleep, and innocence in equal measure throughout its small body that measures barely 1 foot tall. The creature's head forms a perfect 5-pointed star shape, with each point ending in a decorative streamer that references Japanese wish-granting traditions where people write desires on paper strips and hang them from tree branches. Its closed eyes suggest perpetual sleep, or perhaps peaceful dreams, giving it a serene expression that makes it feel gentle and approachable despite its incredible cosmic powers. The color scheme of pale yellow and white reinforces this connection to stars and purity, making Jirachi feel like something that belongs in the night sky rather than walking the earth. The third eye that sits in the center of Jirachi's abdomen remains closed during normal circumstances, opening only when the Pokemon grants wishes or faces serious danger that threatens its safety. This design choice adds an element of mystery to the creature's appearance, suggesting hidden depths and powers that only reveal themselves in specific circumstances, and the eye's placement on the stomach rather than the face creates visual interest while connecting to various mythological traditions about beings with unusual eye configurations. When this central eye opens, it reveals a deep blue color that contrasts sharply with the rest of Jirachi's gentle palette, emphasizing the seriousness and power of the moments when it activates. In terms of battle capabilities, Jirachi distinguishes itself from the previous mythical Pokemon by abandoning the 100 stat distribution in favor of a more specialized spread that emphasizes bulk and consistency. Its defensive stats reach 100 in both physical and special categories, making it remarkably difficult to knock out despite its tiny size, while its attack and special attack stats sit at 100 each, providing solid offensive presence without overwhelming opponents. This balanced but defensive spread, combined with its steel and psychic typing, gives Jirachi excellent staying power in competitive battles, allowing it to function as a reliable wish passer, status spreader, or calm mind sweeper, depending on team requirements. The signature move associated with Jirachi, called Doom Desire, reflects the darker implications of wish-granting mythology, where desires granted without careful consideration often lead to unintended consequences. This steel-type attack creates a delayed damage effect, storing energy on the turn it's used before striking the target with tremendous force. 2 turns later, and this mechanical delay mirrors the idea that wishes sometimes take time to manifest and may not appear in the form we originally expected. The move's name itself suggests that even positive wishes can lead to negative outcomes when fate and desire collide in unpredictable ways, adding psychological depth to what could have been a simple, high-powered attack. The 6th generation brought a remarkable gift to longtime players by finally making Jirachi accessible through standard gameplay rather than limited time events, as anyone who downloaded the Pokemon Bank application during its launch window received a Jirachi directly into their storage system. This distribution method represented a significant shift in Game Freak's philosophy regarding mythical Pokemon, acknowledging that many players had never experienced the joy of owning these special creatures due to geographical limitations or timing conflicts. The decision to reward players for engaging with the series' cloud storage system felt appropriate, connecting Jirachi's wish-granting theme to the modern wish that fans had held for years, the ability to transfer and preserve their Pokemon across multiple generations. As we drift a little deeper tonight through this catalog of mysterious creatures, Generation 3 also introduced Deoxys, a psychic-type Pokemon whose alien origins and connection to space viruses created something entirely different from the nature-focused mythical Pokemon that preceded it. According to the Pokédex entries found across multiple games, Deoxys began as a simple virus living in a meteorite, and when that space rock entered Earth's atmosphere and became exposed to a mysterious laser beam, the virus mutated rapidly into a fully formed Pokemon with incredible psychic abilities. This science fiction origin story departed dramatically from the folklore and mythology themes that characterized Mew, Celebi, and Jirachi, suggesting that the Pokemon universe contained room for multiple types of mythical creatures with vastly different backgrounds. The most distinctive feature of Deoxys involves its ability to shift between 4 different forms: normal, attack, defense, and speed, each with dramatically different stat distributions that allow it to fulfill completely different roles within battle teams. This form-changing mechanic was originally tied to specific meteorites found in various game locations, requiring players to interact with these space rocks to transform their Deoxys between its available states. The normal form provides balanced stats similar to other mythical Pokemon, while the attack form pushes both offensive stats to astronomical levels of 180, creating one of the hardest-hitting Pokemon in the entire series at the cost of defensive fragility. The defense form inverts this philosophy completely, raising both defensive stats to 160 while reducing offensive capabilities to 70, transforming Deoxys into a nearly immovable wall that can absorb tremendous punishment before falling. Meanwhile, the speed form prioritizes outpacing opponents above all else, granting a speed stat of 180 while maintaining respectable 150 in both attack categories. This versatility through transformation makes Deoxys unique among mythical Pokemon, as no other creature in this category can adapt its fundamental attributes so dramatically to match different strategic needs, and there's a quiet comfort in remembering moments like these, when Game Freak experimented with mechanical innovation rather than following established formulas. The visual design of Deoxys emphasizes its extraterrestrial nature through geometric patterns and alien anatomy that feels distinctly non-organic, despite the creature being classified as a living organism. Its body consists of smooth, crystalline surfaces in shades of orange and blue-green, with tentacle-like appendages that can reshape themselves into various configurations depending on which form it has currently adopted. The head features no mouth and only minimal facial features, giving it an inscrutable, emotionless appearance that enhances the sense that this being comes from somewhere beyond human or even Pokemon comprehension. The crystalline core visible in its chest suggests that Deoxys remains fundamentally different from the Earth-born life, perhaps not fully adapted to terrestrial existence despite its incredible powers. The Delta episode in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire finally granted players the ability to catch Deoxys through normal gameplay rather than requiring special event distributions, marking another significant shift in how Game Freak handled mythical Pokemon access. This post-game storyline involved preventing a meteorite collision with the Hoenn region, and upon completing the mission, players could travel into space itself to battle and capture Deoxys at the top of Sky Pillar. The integration of this mythical Pokemon into the main game's narrative, rather than keeping it separate through external events, felt refreshing, allowing Deoxys to contribute meaningfully to the region's story while becoming accessible to everyone who completed the game, rather than just those who attended specific events or lived in particular countries. Before we continue this gentle journey through mythical Pokemon history, Generation 4 deserves recognition for introducing multiple mythical creatures in a single generation, expanding this exclusive category more than any previous release. The first of these, Phione, occupies a strange position in the mythical hierarchy because it can be obtained through breeding rather than requiring event distributions, yet it still carries the mythical classification that prevents it from being traded over the global trade station like ordinary Pokemon. This unusual status comes from Phione being the offspring of Manaphy when bred with Ditto, creating the only example in the entire series where a mythical Pokemon can produce eggs that hatch into a related but distinctly different species. Phione's design closely resembles Manaphy with its blue coloration and water-type classification, but it lacks the red gems and elaborate head antenna that make Manaphy visually distinctive and immediately recognizable. This simpler appearance extends to its battle capabilities as well, with Phione possessing merely 480 total base stats compared to Manaphy's full 600, making it significantly weaker despite the obvious visual and thematic connections between the two species. The fact that Phione cannot evolve into Manaphy, despite being Manaphy's child, creates an unusual situation where the offspring remains permanently inferior to its parent, breaking the typical pattern where breeding produces pre-evolutions that eventually grow into the species that created them. The lore surrounding Phione remains sparse and underdeveloped compared to other mythical Pokemon, with most Pokédex entries simply stating that it drifts through warm ocean waters in large groups, returning to the place where it was born no matter how far the currents carry it away. This homing instinct connects to real-world behaviors observed in various marine animals, particularly sea turtles, that return to specific beaches to lay their eggs, and the idea of Phione traveling vast distances across the ocean to reach its birthplace creates a gentle, melancholic image of tiny blue creatures swimming endlessly through dark waters, guided only by instinct and memory. The lack of additional mythology or legendary status makes Phione feel more like a regular Pokemon that accidentally received mythical classification rather than a creature deserving of that exclusive title. Manaphy itself, the parent species that can produce Phione through breeding, possesses much more substantial lore and presence within the 4th generation games and associated media. This water-type Pokemon hatches from a special egg that must be obtained through specific methods, originally requiring players to complete Pokemon Ranger missions and transfer the egg to their Diamond or Pearl cartridges through wireless connection. The process of obtaining Manaphy felt appropriately special and involved, requiring engagement with spin-off games and creating a sense of connectivity between different Pokemon experiences. Once hatched, Manaphy would immediately bond with its original trainer, and this initial bond could never be replicated if the Pokemon was traded away, adding emotional weight to the decision to keep or share this rare creature. The design of Manaphy incorporates elements of sea angels, small marine mollusks that drift through cold ocean waters with wing-like appendages that propel them gracefully through the depths. Its round body and cheerful expression give it an approachable, friendly appearance that contrasts with the more serious or mysterious aesthetics of other mythical Pokemon, and the bright blue coloration dotted with yellow accents creates a vibrant, energetic visual that stands out against the darker blues and greens of most water-type creatures. The two long antennae extending from its head serve multiple purposes in its design, creating visual balance while suggesting sensory capabilities that allow Manaphy to navigate vast oceans and locate other members of its species across enormous distances. Manaphy's signature ability, hydration, reflects its deep connection to ocean environments by automatically healing status conditions whenever rain falls during battle, giving it excellent synergy with rain-based team strategies popular in competitive play. Its signature move, Heart Swap, creates fascinating strategic possibilities by exchanging all stat changes between Manaphy and its opponent, allowing clever players to steal beneficial boosts their opponents have accumulated while passing along any negative stat drops Manaphy has suffered. This move reinforces the themes of bonds and connections present throughout Manaphy's lore, suggesting that hearts and abilities can be shared or exchanged between beings that understand each other. And before your eyes grow heavy, maybe tap subscribe for more calming videos and share where you're watching from tonight. The next mythical Pokémon, introduced during Generation 4, takes us away from ocean depths and into the forests and grasslands, where Shaymin dwells in multiple forms. This grass-type creature exists in two distinct forms, land form and sky form, with the transformation triggered by exposing Shaymin to a Gracidia flower during daytime hours. The land form resembles a small hedgehog covered in grass and flowers, with a gentle, timid personality that causes it to curl into a ball when threatened, while the sky form gains flying-type characteristics and a more confident, aggressive demeanor, along with graceful features that suggest a small deer or reindeer. Shaymin's role in the ecosystem involves purifying polluted land by absorbing toxins and transforming them into harmless particles, then releasing these purified elements back into the environment through the flowers that grow across its body. This environmental theme connects Shaymin to real-world concerns about pollution and ecosystem health, making it one of the more overtly message-driven mythical Pokémon, despite the series' general reluctance to become preachy about environmental issues. The Pokédex states that when Shaymin absorbs enough toxins and transforms them into clean energy, the flowers on its back bloom simultaneously in a display of natural beauty, and areas where Shaymin has lived become vibrant with plant life and floral diversity that exceeds the normal capacity of that climate zone. The stat distribution between Shaymin's two forms creates distinct battle roles, with land form functioning as a bulky grass type, with 100 base defense and special defense, alongside 100 base special attack, making it an effective specially oriented wall that can absorb hits while dealing respectable damage. Skyform redistributes these stats to emphasize speed and offense, raising its speed to 127 and its attack to 103, while reducing defensive stats to match, transforming Shaymin into a fast, hard-hitting mixed attacker that can outpace most opponents. This mechanical difference encourages players to consider which form best suits their team's needs, rather than automatically defaulting to one version, and the form change mechanic adds strategic depth by allowing adjustments between battles. Shaymin's signature move in land form, called Seed Flare, launches a powerful blast of natural energy that has a 40% chance of sharply lowering the target's special defense stat, making it one of the most reliable ways to break through specially defensive Pokémon while dealing heavy immediate damage. The move's 120 base power and grass typing give Shaymin excellent offensive presence, despite its otherwise defensive stat spread, and the secondary effect of potentially destroying the opponent's special bulk creates interesting mind games where opponents must decide whether to switch out and risk the stat drop or stay in and attempt to endure. The visual effect of Seed Flare shows brilliant green energy erupting from the ground beneath the target, suggesting that Shaymin taps into the Earth's natural power rather than generating the attack purely from its own body. Slowly, the story widens to encompass Darkrai, a Dark-type mythical Pokémon whose powers and themes stand in direct opposition to the light and growth represented by Shaymin and Manaphy. This creature embodies nightmares themselves, possessing the ability to trap sleeping beings inside endless bad dreams from which they cannot wake naturally, and according to various Pokédex entries, Darkrai causes this suffering unintentionally rather than maliciously, unable to control the nightmarish aura that constantly emanates from its body. The tragedy of Darkrai's existence involves being fundamentally isolated from others because its mere presence brings terror and suffering to anyone who falls asleep nearby, creating a lonely existence where connection becomes impossible despite potentially desiring friendship and understanding. The design of Darkrai emphasizes shadows, flowing darkness, and elements of classic nightmare imagery through its predominantly black coloration and wispy, smoke-like lower body that suggests it can fade in and out of visible reality at will. The red, collar-like structure around its neck provides the only significant color contrast against the darkness, drawing attention to the head and face while creating a visual focal point that prevents the design from becoming an indistinct black mass. Its single bright blue eye glows with eerie light against the surrounding darkness, while the other eye remains hidden behind white hair that partially obscures its face, giving Darkrai an asymmetrical, unsettling appearance that reinforces its connection to bad dreams and nighttime fears. Darkrai's signature move, Dark Void, inflicts sleep status on all adjacent opponents with an 80% accuracy rate before recent generations nerfed it to prevent competitive abuse, making it one of the most powerful sleep-inducing moves available in the game. The ability to potentially put multiple opponents to sleep simultaneously gave Darkrai incredible strategic value in double battles, as sleeping Pokémon not only miss their turns, but become vulnerable to moves like Dream Eater or attacks that deal extra damage to sleeping targets. The mechanical implementation of Dark Void reinforces Darkrai's lore by demonstrating its ability to spread nightmares to multiple beings at once, overwhelming their consciousness with darkness and fear until they collapse into unwanted sleep. The relationship between Darkrai and Cresselia, a legendary Pokémon introduced in the same generation, creates a thematic balance between nightmares and pleasant dreams, darkness and light, isolation, and connection that adds depth to both creatures' lore. While Darkrai inadvertently causes nightmares and suffering, Cresselia possesses the power to dispel bad dreams and bring peaceful rest to those troubled by nocturnal terrors, and the two Pokémon exist as natural counterbalances that maintain equilibrium in the realm of sleep and dreams. This relationship appears prominently in Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time and Darkness, where Darkrai serves as the primary antagonist, manipulating events from the shadows, while in the anime, A misunderstood Darkrai tries to protect a garden that holds special meaning to it, despite humans fearing and attempting to drive it away. In Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, players could obtain Darkrai through special event distributions that unlocked a side quest on New Moon Island, a small landmass accessible only through a special item called the Member Card. This location remained hidden in the game's code until players received the necessary event item, creating anticipation and mystery around when and how this content would become available. The member card allowed access to a locked building in Canaleve City, where the player would fall asleep and wake up on New Moon Island, finding Darkrai waiting in the only clearing on this dark, fog-shrouded location. This integration of the event Pokemon into a specific in-game location with environmental storytelling felt more satisfying than simple delivery systems that just added the Pokemon directly to your party or box. As we drift a little deeper tonight through Generation 4's abundant mythical offerings, we encounter Arceus, perhaps the most powerful and significant mythical Pokemon ever created in terms of lore and gameplay implications. Known as the Original One and the Alpha Pokemon, Arceus allegedly created the entire Pokemon universe, forming the dimensions of time, space, and antimatter by bringing Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina into existence before shaping the physical world and creating Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf to bring emotion, knowledge, and willpower to living beings. This creation mythology positions Arceus as the closest thing the Pokemon universe has to a capital G god, existing above and beyond all other creatures, including the most powerful legendary Pokemon, and its very existence raises philosophical questions about the nature of reality within the series' fictional universe. The visual design of Arceus communicates divine power and ancient origins through its centaur-like body structure, golden coloration, and the elaborate wheel-like structure that encircles its torso like a permanent halo or divine ring. Its face remains largely expressionless, with green eyes that suggest awareness without revealing specific emotions, giving it a detached, almost mechanical quality, despite being the creator of all life and consciousness. The four pointed tips, extending from the ring structure, create a cross-like or star-like pattern depending on viewing angle, connecting Arceus visually to religious and cosmic symbolism found across multiple human cultures. This design choice makes Arceus feel appropriately godlike and transcendent, rather than simply being another powerful creature. Mechanically, Arceus possesses the unique ability to change its type depending on which plate item it holds, with 18 different plates corresponding to each Pokemon type, allowing Arceus to become literally any type in the game. This type-changing ability directly connects to the lore, stating that Arceus created all types of Pokemon, and therefore must contain the essence of every type within itself, and from a gameplay perspective, this versatility allows Arceus to adapt to any team composition or counter any specific threats by adjusting its typing before battle. The multi-type ability that enables these transformations cannot be suppressed or altered through normal means, emphasizing that Arceus exists beyond typical rules and limitations that govern other Pokemon. The signature move associated with Arceus, called Judgment, creates a powerful blast of energy that changes type to match whatever plate Arceus currently holds, giving it Stab, or same type attack bonus, on a 100 base power move, regardless of which type it has adopted. This move reinforces the idea that Arceus passes judgment on all creation, determining the fate of beings through its absolute power and authority, and the visual effect shows brilliant multicolored light raining down from above, like divine wrath manifested as pure energy. The name Judgment itself carries obvious religious connotations, suggesting Arceus functions as both creator and an ultimate arbiter of the Pokemon universe, capable of granting life or taking it away according to inscrutable divine will. Obtaining Arceus through legitimate means proved nearly impossible for many years, as the Azure Flute item that would trigger its appearance in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum was never officially distributed despite existing in the game's code. This decision apparently stemmed from concerns that the event felt too complex or confusing for younger players, requiring them to travel to Spear Pillar and play the flute in a specific location to summon a stairway leading into another dimension. The cancellation of this distribution left Arceus trapped in the code, obtainable only through cheating devices or trading with players who had used such devices, creating frustration among fans who wanted to experience this climactic encounter legitimately. Years later, future games would make Arceus available through more straightforward event distributions, finally allowing players to add the God of Pokemon to their collections without resorting to unofficial methods. Before we move deeper into Generation 5's contributions to the Mythical Pokémon roster, there's a quiet comfort in remembering moments like these, when the series pushed boundaries and experimented with increasingly ambitious concepts and storytelling approaches. Generation 4 introduced more mythical Pokémon than any generation before or since, expanding this exclusive category from 3 members to 8 in a single release, and this creative abundance suggested that Game Freak had discovered a comfortable formula for designing these special creatures. The variety present in Generation 4's mythical roster, from ocean dwellers to forest guardians, from nightmare incarnations to literal gods, demonstrated that the mythical classification could accommodate wildly different concepts and designs without becoming restrictive or formulaic. Generation 5 brought us to the Unova region, a place inspired by New York City and the broader northeastern United States rather than Japanese locations, and this geographic shift influenced the types of mythology and folklore that inspired new Pokemon designs. The first mythical Pokemon introduced in this generation, Victini, draws its concept from victory itself, embodying the abstract idea that success and triumph can be made tangible through a willpower and determination. This psychic and fire-type creature generates unlimited energy within its body, and any trainer or Pokemon who spends time around Victini supposedly receives enhanced luck and increased likelihood of achieving victory in battles, competitions, or other challenges. The power to guarantee success creates interesting ethical questions that the series never fully explores, particularly regarding whether victories achieved through Victini's influence feel as satisfying as those earned through skill and effort alone. Victini's design incorporates elements of the V for Victory hand gesture, popularized during World War II, with the creature's large, pointed ears forming a clear V shape when viewed head-on, while its cream-colored body and orange accents create a warm, friendly appearance that makes it feel approachable, despite its incredible powers. The wings that extend from near its shoulders resemble simplified fire, or perhaps victory flags, and when Victini flies, these wings leave trails of fiery energy behind, creating visual spectacle while reinforcing its fire typing. At merely 1 foot 4 inches tall, Victini maintains the tradition of small, cute, mythical Pokemon that contrast their tiny bodies with enormous power levels, making them feel special rather than physically intimidating. The signature move associated with Victini, Searing Shot, unleashes a fierce explosion of flames that targets all adjacent Pokemon, regardless of whether they are opponents or allies, dealing heavy fire-type damage while carrying a 30% chance to inflict burn status on each target. This move type provides excellent coverage in single battles while creating interesting risk-reward scenarios in double or triple battles where hitting your own partner might become necessary to hit multiple opponents. Mechanically, Searing Shot gave Victini a powerful, reliable stab option that could break through physical walls thanks to its 100 base power and coming from Victini's 100 base special attack stat. And before we continue, maybe tap subscribe for more peaceful videos and tell me where you're listening from tonight. Generation 5 also introduced Keldeo, a water and fighting type mythical Pokémon that serves as the fourth member of the Swords of Justice Quartet alongside the legendary Pokémon Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. This young horse-like creature functions as an apprentice to the three older members, learning their techniques and philosophy while gradually developing its own unique fighting style that combines water manipulation with martial arts precision. The lore describes how the Swords of Justice rescued Keldeo as a foal during a forest fire caused by human warfare, and the three legendary Pokémon raised it as their student and adopted child, teaching it to protect the weak and stand against those who would cause unjust suffering. This found family dynamic adds emotional warmth to what could have been a simple combat-focused backstory, and Keldeo's journey from frightened orphan to confident hero mirrors classic coming-of-age narratives found throughout children's literature. Keldeo possesses two distinct forms that reflect its character development and growing mastery of its signature technique. Ordinary form represents its default state, while Resolute Form activates when Keldeo learns the move. Secret Sword, with the transformation causing at its horn to change from a simple spike to an elaborate blade-like structure. This Form change represents Keldeo's graduation from student to full-fledged member of the Swords of Justice, acknowledging that it has achieved sufficient skill and confidence to stand alongside its teachers as an equal rather than remaining in their shadow as a perpetual apprentice. The mechanical requirements for this transformation reinforce the narrative by tying the visual change directly to mastering the signature move, creating a sense that form follows function and appearance reflects internal growth. Secret Sword itself operates as a fighting type special attack that calculates damage using the target's physical defense stat rather than special defense, making it one of the few special moves that bypass specially defensive Pokémon and instead target their typically weaker physical bulk. This unique mechanical property gives Keldeo excellent neutral coverage when combined with its water-type stab moves, allowing it to threaten both physical walls with Secret Sword and special walls with Hydro Pump or Surf. The move's name suggests hidden technique or concealed mastery that only reveals itself when the time is right, connecting to themes of secret knowledge passed from teacher to student, and the idea that true martial artists keep their deadliest techniques hidden until absolutely necessary. The next mythical creature, introduced during Generation 5, takes us in a completely different thematic direction, as Meloetta embodies music itself through its dual-type combinations and form-changing abilities tied to performance and battle. This normal and psychic type Pokémon exists in two distinct forms. Aria form emphasizes special attack and speed while maintaining the normal and psychic typing, while Pirouette form shifts to normal and fighting while boosting physical attack and defense at the cost of special attack and speed. The transformation between these forms occurs when Meloetta uses its signature move, Relic Song, during battle, allowing it to adapt its role mid-combat, depending on what threats or opportunities the current situation presents. Meloetta's design draws obvious inspiration from musical notation and performance arts, with its hair in aria form resembling a treble clef and flowing like a performer's elaborate gown, while pirouette form transforms this hair into a bun-like structure that suggests a dancer ready for vigorous physical movement. The green gemstone decorations adorning its body reference musical notes and ornaments found in sheet music, while the overall body structure suggests a feminine figure engaged in graceful artistic expression. This anthropomorphic design makes Meloetta one of the most human-like mythical Pokémon created up to this point, and its obvious connection to human artistic traditions separates it from more natural or elemental mythical creatures like Shaymin or Celebi. According to the scattered lore surrounding Meloetta's origins, this Pokemon's melodies possess the power to influence emotions and even physical reality, with songs that can bring joy, sadness, courage, or fear, depending on the composition and intent behind the performance. Ancient people apparently treasured Meloetta's presence and built temples where it would perform for gathered crowds, with these concerts serving social and spiritual functions within communities that understood and appreciated the Pokemon's artistic gifts. At some point in the distant past, Meloetta became frightened or traumatized by human conflict and violence, causing it to lose its red song and fall silent for centuries, until eventually beginning to sing again in the modern era. This backstory adds melancholic depth to what could have been a simple music-themed creature, suggesting that beauty and art become casualties during times of war and hatred. Generation 5's final mythical Pokémon, Genesect, represents another dramatic departure from natural mythology by embracing science fiction themes and exploring the consequences of weaponizing Pokémon through technological enhancement. This bug and steel-type creature existed as an ancient predator over 300 million years ago, and after Team Plasma discovered its fossilized remains, the villainous organization's scientists resurrected and heavily modified it by installing a cannon directly onto its back. This transformation elevated Genesect from extinct creature to living weapon, capable of firing various beam types depending on which drive cartridge is loaded into its cannon, and the ethical implications of forcibly modifying a living being into a weapon receive surprisingly little exploration, despite being central to Genesect's existence and identity. The visual design of Genesect combines organic insectoid features with mechanical components in a way that clearly communicates its status as a cyborg creature existing between natural and artificial categories. Its purple body maintains an insect-like segmented structure with appropriate joints and proportions, while the metallic cannon mounted on its back dominates the silhouette and draws immediate attention as the primary design feature. The head features a single red eye that suggests mechanical vision systems more than organic eyes, and the ability to retract its limbs and transform into a high-speed flight mode demonstrates functionality that clearly exceeds what an unmodified Pokémon could achieve. This design succeeds in making Genesect feel genuinely alien and unsettling despite its relatively small size, creating discomfort through the visual juxtaposition of living tissue and installed hardware. Genesect's signature move, Technoblast, fires a beam of energy that changes type depending on which drive is installed in its cannon, similar to how Arceus's Judgment changes type based on held plates. The 4 available drives, Shock, Burn, Chill, and Douse, convert Technoblast into electric, fire, ice, or water type respectively, giving Genesect excellent type coverage and the ability to threaten a wide range of opponents by selecting the appropriate drive before battle. This mechanical versatility reinforces the idea that Genesect functions as a customizable weapon system rather than a natural creature with fixed attributes, and the move's 120 base power makes it a genuinely threatening attack regardless of which type it becomes. The visual effect shows Genesect locking its legs together and pointing its cannon forward before unleashing a devastating energy beam, emphasizing the creature's nature as a living artillery piece. The ethical questions raised by Genesect's existence extend beyond the simple fact of its modification to examine who bears responsibility for the actions of created beings and whether resurrection constitutes a gift or curse when the resurrected creature finds itself in an unfamiliar time period. Genesect died naturally millions of years before humans existed, and being brought back to life in the modern era means waking up in a world that bears no resemblance to its original environment, surrounded by creatures it doesn't recognize, and lacking any others of its own species. The modifications made to its body happened without consent, because consent cannot be obtained from the dead, and while these changes granted incredible power, they also fundamentally altered what Genesect was at a biological and existential level. The series never fully grapples with these implications, instead treating Genesect primarily as a cool robotic bug, Pokémon, rather than a tragic figure deserving sympathy and ethical consideration. If you're still awake halfway through, maybe subscribe before you drift off and tell me what time it is where you're watching from. Generation 6 introduced the Kalos region, inspired by France, and brought with it 3 new mythical Pokémon that embodied different aspects of mischief, creation, and natural balance that would become relevant to the game's plot and themes. The first of these, Diancie, originated as a mutated carbink that underwent a mysterious transformation process that granted it the power to create diamonds through compression and crystallization of carbon molecules in the air around it. This rock and fairy-type creature maintains visual similarities to its carbink origins while displaying enhanced elegance and regal bearing that elevates it above its common counterparts, and according to legend, a Diancie appears only once every several centuries when environmental conditions and random genetic chance align perfectly to trigger this spontaneous evolution. Diancie's design emphasizes crystalline beauty and geometric precision through its body structure, composed of various diamond formations and pink gemstones that catch and refract light in dazzling displays. The pink color scheme creates a softer, more approachable aesthetic than pure transparent diamonds might offer, while the elaborate dress-like lower body and bow-like structure adorning its head suggest royalty and formal presentation. At merely 2 feet 4 inches tall, Diancie maintains manageable proportions while still reading as elegant and refined rather than cute or childish, striking a careful balance that allows it to function as a princess figure without appearing juvenile. The ability to create infinite diamonds from surrounding carbon raises interesting economic questions that the games wisely avoid addressing, as a creature that can generate unlimited wealth would presumably destabilize any currency system based on precious materials. The signature move associated with Diancie, Diamond Storm, creates a storm of diamond particles that strikes all adjacent opponents while carrying a 50% chance to sharply raise Diancie's own defense stat after attacking. This combination of immediate offensive pressure and potential defensive boosting makes Diamond Storm an excellent all-around move that can deal significant damage while simultaneously making Diancie harder to knock out in subsequent turns. The rock typing of this attack gives Diancie a reliable stab damage, despite its relatively modest base 100 special attack stat, and the move's accuracy of 95% means it connects reliably enough for competitive use without being overly centralizing or frustrating to play against. Visually, the move shows countless diamonds erupting from the ground around Diancie before launching toward opponents like beautiful, deadly projectiles. Diancie later received a Mega Evolution in the form of Mega Diancie, transforming its stat distribution to emphasize speed and offensive power rather than bulk and consistency, with the Mega Evolution granting an incredible base 160 special attack alongside 110 speed that allows it to function as a fast, hard-hitting wall breaker. This transformation comes with the typical drawback of requiring a Mega Evolution Stone and preventing other team members from using their own Mega Evolutions, but the raw statistical improvements often justify this opportunity cost in team building. The design of Mega Diancie expands the crystalline formations across its body and makes them larger and more elaborate, creating a more dramatic silhouette that communicates increased power. And before we drift in any further, maybe tap subscribe for more relaxing videos, and let me know where you're joining from tonight. The next mythical Pokemon, introduced during Generation 6, Hoopa, possesses the power to create interdimensional portals that can transport objects, Pokemon, or even legendary beings across vast distances instantly. This psychic and ghost-type mischief maker exists in two distinct forms. Confined form measures merely 1 foot 8 inches tall and specializes in using its 6 rings to create portals for stealing treasures and playing pranks on unsuspecting victims, while Unbound form towers at 21 feet and shifts to psychic and dark typing while embracing its full power as a djinn-like entity capable of battling legendary Pokemon on equal terms. The transformation between these forms occurs when Hoopa uses the Prison Bottle item, an artifact that was created specifically to seal away Hoopa's full power after it caused massive destruction while in Unbound form decades or centuries ago. The lore surrounding Hoopa describes it as a creature that once terrorized a desert city by stealing valuable items and causing chaos through its portal abilities until sages and mystics worked together to create the Prison Bottle that would seal its dangerous powers and reduce it to the smaller, less threatening confined form. This backstory connects Hoopa to various mythological traditions about genies, demons, and trickster spirits that must be bound or controlled to prevent them from harming humans, and the fact that Hoopa appears generally friendly and playful in its confined state raises questions about whether the sealing was truly necessary or represented overreaction to behavior that was mischievous rather than genuinely malicious. The games never provide clear answers about Hoopa's intentions or the morality of forcibly limiting its power, instead leaving these questions for players to consider on their own. In confined form, Hoopa's design emphasizes cuteness and playfulness through its small stature, large eyes, and the 6 golden rings floating around its body that it uses to create portals by expanding them to various sizes. The purple and pink color scheme feels magical and whimsical, while the pointed hood-like structure on its head suggests djinn or genie aesthetics without being overly literal or heavy-handed. The horns curving upward from this hood add a slightly mischievous or devilish touch that hints at Hoopa's capacity for causing trouble, while its friendly expression and animated gestures make it feel approachable and fun-loving rather than genuinely threatening. This balance between cute and slightly naughty creates an effective character design that communicates personality even in static artwork. Unbound form transforms Hoopa into something far more imposing and aggressive, with a massive body, 6 powerful arms ending in large hands, and a fierce expression that suggests battle readiness rather than playful pranks. The color scheme shifts to darker purples and blacks, while the golden rings become incorporated into its arms rather than floating freely, suggesting that in this state, Hoopa's portal powers are focused on combat applications rather than theft and mischief. The design draws from Arabian mythology's depictions of jinn as powerful, potentially dangerous entities that could grant wishes, but might also bring ruin, and the sheer size increase from less than 2 feet to over 21 feet tall creates immediate visual impact, that communicates the difference between sealed and unsealed states. The signature move of Confined Form Hoopa, Hyperspace Hole, creates a portal next to the target that bypasses protection moves and screens before striking with psychic energy, making it one of the few attacks in the game that ignores Protect, Detect, King's Shield, and similar defensive techniques. This property makes Hoopa an excellent answer to stall-oriented teams that rely heavily on protection moves to waste turns and accumulate passive damage, and the move's 80 base power combined with Hoopa's 110 special attack stat provides solid offensive pressure. Unbound Form gains access to Hyperspace Fury instead, a dark-type move with the same protection bypassing property, but increased 100 base power and the drawback of lowering Hoopa's defense stat after use, creating a risk-reward scenario where using the move leaves Hoopa more vulnerable to physical attacks in subsequent turns. As we drift a little deeper tonight through Generation 6's mythical offerings, the final edition comes in the form of Volcanion, a fire and water type Pokémon whose unique type combination had never appeared before its introduction and has not been repeated since. This dual typing creates interesting strategic implications by giving Volcanion a quad weakness to ground-type attacks while providing resistance to ice, bug, steel, fire, water, and fairy types, and its ability, Water's Absorb grants complete immunity to water-type attacks, turning one of its theoretical weaknesses into a neutralized non-factor. The design draws inspiration from steam engines and Industrial Revolution aesthetics, with cannon-like structures on its back that release high-pressure steam used both for locomotion and combat, creating a creature that exists at the intersection of natural elemental forces and human technological advancement. Volcanion's lore positions it as a solitary creature that creates habitats for other Pokémon by using its steam-generating abilities to shape mountain ranges and create environments where life can flourish in otherwise inhospitable locations. This terraforming capability makes Volcanion an ecosystem engineer similar to real-world keystone species, whose activities create niches and resources that other organisms depend upon, and the idea that this volcanic creature acts as a benevolent habitat creator rather than a destructive force adds unexpected depth to what could have been a simple fire and water monster design. The Pokédex entries suggest Volcanion prefers isolation and avoids human contact, making it one of the more misanthropic mythical Pokémon despite its environmentally beneficial behaviors. The signature move associated with Volcanion, Steam Eruption, combines fire and water concepts into a single attack that deals fire-type damage while carrying a 30% chance to inflict burn status on targets, and uniquely, this move can burn fire-type Pokémon despite their normal immunity to burn status. This property makes Steam Eruption an excellent answer to fire-type switch-ins that would normally wall fire-type attacks, as burning them cripples their physical offense and creates passive residual damage that pressures them to switch out again. The 110 base power ensures Steam Eruption hits hard enough to threaten most targets even without super effective multipliers, and coming from Volcanion's base 130 special attack stat, this move can devastate anything that doesn't resist fire-type damage. Generation 7 transported players to the Alola region inspired by Hawaii and Polynesian culture, bringing with it 3 mythical Pokémon whose designs and concepts drew from different sources and fulfilled different narrative roles. The first of these, Magearna, represents another artificial Pokémon created through human ingenuity, though unlike Genesect, it was built from scratch rather than modified from an existing creature. This steel and fairy-type artificial life form was constructed 500 years before the events of the Alola games by a brilliant inventor who wanted to create a companion for a princess, and the Pokemon's ability to sense the emotions, thoughts, and physical conditions of other living beings made it perfectly suited for this companionship role. The fact that Magearna possesses genuine emotions and consciousness despite being artificial raises philosophical questions about what constitutes life and whether created beings deserve the same ethical consideration as naturally occurring organisms. Magearna's design emphasizes clockwork mechanics and Victorian-era aesthetics through intricate mechanical details, visible gears and joints, and an overall appearance suggesting a wind-up automaton or extremely sophisticated music box. The color scheme of silver, gold, and red creates an elegant, refined look that suggests careful craftsmanship and attention to aesthetic detail beyond mere functionality, while the dress-like lower body maintains feminine coating appropriate for a creature designed as a princess's companion. At 3 feet 3 inches tall, Magearna stands larger than many mythical Pokémon while still maintaining proportions that allow it to interact comfortably with human-sized characters, and its ability to retract into a Pokeball shape when resting or hiding demonstrates engineering sophistication that goes beyond simple combat functionality. The most distinctive feature of Magearna's anatomy involves the soul heart, a sophisticated core mechanism located in its chest that functions as both power source and an emotional center, allowing Magearna to experience genuine feelings despite its mechanical nature. This device increases Magearna's special attack stat by 1 stage whenever any Pokémon on the battlefield faints, including allies and opponents, creating a snowball effect where Magearna becomes progressively stronger as battle casualties accumulate. The name Soul Heart suggests this component represents something more than mere machinery, implying that its creator somehow imbued it with genuine spiritual essence or emotional capacity, rather than simply programming sophisticated responses to external stimuli. The series never explains how this artificial soul differs from or compares to the souls of natural Pokémon, instead leaving these metaphysical questions unexamined. Magearna received an alternate coloration called Original Color Magearna, featuring red and gold as its primary colors rather than silver and red, and this form represents Magearna's appearance when it was first constructed 500 years ago, before centuries of use dulled and weathered its exterior finish. This alternate coloration does not affect battle statistics or abilities, functioning purely as an aesthetic variation that players could obtain through specific QR code scanning procedures in the Alola games. The existence of this variant reinforces the idea, that Magearna ages and changes over time despite being mechanical, suggesting that even artificial creatures experience wear and transformation as centuries pass, and there's a quiet comfort in remembering moments like these, when Game Freak added small details that enrich the world without serving immediate gameplay purposes. The second mythical Pokémon, introduced during Generation 7, takes us into much stranger territory with Marshadow, a fighting and ghost-type creature whose very existence remained unknown to most Pokémon researchers until quite recently due to its exceptional ability to hide within shadows and avoid detection. This small humanoid creature stands just over 2 feet tall and possesses the unique capacity to merge completely with shadows cast by other beings or objects, becoming literally invisible and undetectable while lurking in darkness. According to sparse lore, Marshadow observes powerful fighters from the shadows, copying their techniques and movements to add to its own martial arts repertoire, functioning as an eternal student who learns through observation rather than direct training. Marshadow's design draws inspiration from boxers and martial artists while incorporating ghostly elements that justify its shadow manipulation abilities and phantom typing. Its gray coloration with orange and yellow accents creates a color scheme unlike any other mythical Pokémon, while the wispy flames that emerge from its head and arms suggest spectral energy barely contained within physical form. The hood-like structure covering its head creates mystery by obscuring its face and making it difficult to read emotions or intentions, reinforcing the secretive nature central to its character concept. When Marshadow assumes its zenith form during its exclusive Z move, these flames intensify dramatically, and the creature's entire body becomes wreathed in green fire, transforming its appearance from shadowy observer to fierce combatant ready for serious battle. The signature move associated with Marshadow, Spectral Thief, steals all of the target's positive stat changes before striking with ghost-type damage, allowing Marshadow to punish setup sweepers by taking their accumulated boosts for itself. This punishing effect makes Marshadow an excellent answer to Pokémon that rely on stat-boosting moves to become threatening, as a well-timed Spectral Thief can swing momentum completely by simultaneously weakening the opponent and strengthening Marshadow. The move's 90 base power provides solid damage output even before considering the stolen stat boosts, and combined with Marshadow's base 125 attack stat, Spectral Thief threatens to knock out most neutral targets in a single hit after stealing their boosts. Generation 7's final mythical edition comes through Zeraora, an electric-type Pokémon whose design and fighting style emphasize physical speed and martial arts rather than the ranged electrical attacks typically associated with electric types. This creature generates electricity through muscle contractions created during high-speed movement, effectively turning its own body into a generator that produces more power the faster it moves, creating a feedback loop where increased speed generates more electricity, which enables even faster movement. At 4 feet 11 inches tall, Zeraora stands as one of the taller mythical Pokémon while maintaining a lean, athletic build appropriate for a creature whose combat style centers on speed and physical strikes rather than bulk or special attacks. The design of Zeraora combines feline aesthetics with superhero-like elements through its predominantly yellow and black color scheme, sharp angular features, and lightning bolt markings across its body. The large paws ending in sharp claws suggest a predator built for close quarters combat, while the tufts of fur extending from various points give it a wild, untamed appearance despite its humanoid proportions and posture. The blue eyes and face markings create focal points that prevent the sets design from becoming too busy, despite the various patterns and color breaks across its body, and the overall silhouette reads clearly even at small sizes or from a distance. This balance between complexity and clarity makes Zeraora effective as a character design that can work across various media, from game sprites to animated appearances. Zeraora notably lacks a signature move unique to itself, instead being the signature user of Plasma Fists, a physical electric type attack with base 95 power that changes all normal type moves to electric type for the remainder of the turn after it's used. This field effect creates interesting strategic possibilities in double battles where partners using normal type attacks suddenly gain electric typing and stab bonuses, though the effect's temporary nature limits its practical applications compared to more permanent field effects. The moves and animation shows Zeraora charging its fists with electrical energy before striking with a devastating close-range punch, reinforcing its identity as a physical brawler rather than a special attacker, despite belonging to a type traditionally associated with special offense. Generation 8 brought players to the Galar region, inspired by Great Britain, and introduced 2 new mythical Pokémon whose distributions represented significant departures from traditional event-based systems. The first of these, Zarude, appeared as a dark and grass-type monkey Pokémon that lives in dense forests and exhibits aggressive territorial behavior toward intruders while simultaneously displaying fierce, protective instincts toward its pack members. This duality of aggression toward outsiders and nurturing behavior toward insiders creates a complex character that defies simple good or evil categorization, and the Pokemon movie Secret of the Jungle explores this complexity by showing how a Zarude raises and protects a human child despite the species' general avoidance of human contact. Zarude's design incorporates elements of various primate species, particularly baboons and mandrills, with the addition of vine-like plant structures that wrap around its body and serve both aesthetic and functional purposes. The black fur marked with pink and green accents creates a striking color scheme that immediately communicates both dark and grass typings, while the pink cloth wrapped around its body in Dada Zarude form references the movie character who wears torn fabric as a makeshift cape. At 5 feet 11 inches tall, Zarude ranks among the largest mythical Pokémon introduced so far, and its relatively bulky proportions make it feel more physically imposing than the typically small, cute creatures that dominate this category. The signature move associated with Zarude, Jungle Healing, restores 25% of maximum HP to Zarude and all ally Pokémon, while simultaneously curing status conditions affecting them, making it an excellent support option in double or triple battles, where multiple team members can benefit from the healing simultaneously. This move creates tension with Zarude's otherwise offensively oriented stat distribution that emphasizes attack and speed rather than bulk or support capabilities, and the mismatch between signature move and stat allocation creates awkward situations where Zarude wants to act as a sweeper but possesses a move better suited for bulky support Pokemon. The name Jungle Healing connects to Zarude's forest habitat and its lore about caring for injured Pokemon found within its territory, reinforcing themes of protection and nurturing that contrast with its aggressive appearance. Generation 8's second and final mythical edition comes through Pecharunt, a poison and ghost-type creature whose design and lore embrace darker themes of manipulation and control more explicitly than perhaps any previous mythical Pokémon except Darkrai. This small creature resembles a peach, or perhaps a shell containing something sinister within, and its ability to create special toxic mochi that transforms consumers into mindless puppets carrying out its will creates genuinely unsettling implications about agency, consent, and mental domination. The fact that Pecharunt used these mind control abilities to manipulate the Loyal 3 Pokemon into stealing Ogerpon's masks reveals a calculating, manipulative intelligence willing to use others as expendable tools to achieve its goals, making it one of the more genuinely villainous mythical Pokemon despite its cute appearance. The design of Pecharunt, when opened, reveals a small dark creature living inside a peach-like shell, connecting to the Japanese folktale of Momotaro, where a boy born from a peach travels with a dog, monkey, and pheasant to fight a band of Oni. Pecharunt represents a twisted version of Momotaro himself, with the Loyal 3 serving as corrupted versions of his animal companions, and Ogerpon representing the Oni that serves as the story's antagonist. This subversion of a beloved children's tale adds layers of meaning for players familiar with the source material, transforming what could have been a straightforward good versus evil narrative into something more morally complex, where the apparent hero actually functions as a manipulative villain, and the Oni represents a tragic victim of circumstances beyond its control. Pecharunt's stat distribution creates one of the strangest and most deliberately artificial spreads among all mythical Pokemon, with 5 stats sitting at exactly 88, while defense reaches 160 to bring the total to 600. This allocation references the visual similarity between the number 8 and chain links, connecting to Pecharunt's theme of binding others through toxic chains of control. And the joke becomes even more elaborate when you notice that 6 multiplied by 88 would only total 528 rather than the standard 600 given to mythical Pokemon. The decision to boost defense to 160 specifically to reach the target total creates the impression that Pecharunt is giving players a symbolic middle finger, reinforcing its identity as a creature that manipulates and disrespects others for its own benefit. The signature move associated with Pecharunt, Malignant Chain, deals poison-type damage while carrying a 50% chance to inflict badly poisoned status that deals increasing residual damage each turn, and when combined with Pecharunt's unique ability, Poison Puppeteer, any Pokemon poisoned by Pecharunt also becomes confused. This combination of toxic status and confusion creates devastating pressure that forces opponents to either switch out frequently or risk taking massive damage from both poison and self-inflicted confusion damage, and the thematic connection between toxic mochi causing mental confusion translates perfectly into mechanical terms that feel appropriate and balanced. Pecharunt notably became the first mythical Pokemon obtainable through in-game events rather than requiring external distributions, as players could access the Mochi Mayhem storyline indefinitely after purchasing the hidden treasure of Area Zero DLC. As we drift a little deeper tonight through the complete roster of mythical Pokemon, patterns and themes emerge that help define what makes these creatures special beyond their simple mechanical classification. Many mythical Pokemon embody abstract concepts or themes rather than being purely physical beings. Mew represents genetic potential, Celebi controls time, Jirachi grants wishes, Victini ensures victory, Meloetta channels music, and Pecharunt spreads manipulation. This focus on conceptual embodiment rather than pure elemental power distinguishes mythical Pokemon from many legendary Pokemon whose abilities and identities stem primarily from control over physical forces like weather, land, or sea. The distribution methods for mythical Pokemon have evolved dramatically from the earliest days, when obtaining Mew required mailing your cartridge to Nintendo, through the present era, where some mythical Pokemon can be encountered through standard gameplay, like regular legendaries. This evolution reflects changing technology and business models within the gaming industry, as the impossibility of distributing event Pokemon to global audiences through physical promotions became increasingly apparent during the Internet age. Modern Wi-Fi distributions democratized access to these special creatures, ensuring that players in all regions could obtain them without requiring attendance at specific retailers or events limited to particular geographic areas, though this increased accessibility came at the cost of the mystery and exclusivity that originally defined the mythical category. The visual designs of mythical Pokemon overwhelmingly favor small, cute aesthetics over imposing or intimidating presentations, with most standing less than 4 feet tall and possessing proportions and features that read as approachable or adorable rather than fearsome. This design philosophy creates interesting contrast between their tiny bodies and incredible powers, emphasizing the idea that true strength comes from within rather than from physical size or intimidating appearance. Exceptions like Hoopa Unbound, Volcanion, and Zarude prove memorable specifically because they break this pattern by being larger or more aggressive-looking than typical mythical Pokemon, and their distinctiveness within the category stems partly from their willingness to embrace different aesthetic directions than their peers. The role of mythical Pokemon in competitive battling varies wildly depending on the specific creature's stat distribution, typing, and move pool, with some like Mew and Marshadow seeing extensive use in appropriate tiers, while others like Phione remain largely ignored due to insufficient statistical advantages or awkward movesets. The universal 600 base stat total creates baseline viability that ensures no mythical Pokémon is completely useless, though how those 600 points are distributed makes enormous differences in practical effectiveness. Creatures with balanced stats like Mew can adapt to multiple roles, while those with more specialized distributions, like Deoxys attack form or Marshadow, excel in specific contexts, but struggle when forced outside their optimal niches. And before we move deeper, maybe tap subscribe for more relaxing videos, and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Slowly, the story widens to encompass the cultural impact mythical Pokémon have had on the franchise, beyond their gameplay roles, as these creatures frequently serve as focal points for movies, special events, and promotional campaigns that extend the series into multimedia territories. Nearly every mythical Pokémon has received starring or supporting roles in animated films that explore their lore and personalities more deeply than the games typically allow, with movies like Lucario and The Mystery of Mew, Pokémon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea, and Volcanion and the Mechanical Marvel building entire narratives around these special creatures. These cinematic appearances help establish mythical Pokémon as characters rather than just gameplay mechanics, giving them personalities, motivations, and emotional arcs that resonate with audiences beyond simple power levels or competitive viability. The mystery that originally defined mythical Pokémon has largely evaporated in the modern era due to data mining, official announcements months before distributions occur, and the general accessibility of information through internet communities and social media. Where early players genuinely wondered if Mew existed and traded playground rumors about secret locations or button combinations, contemporary players know about upcoming mythical Pokémon before their games even release, through leaks, official reveals, and promotional materials. This loss of genuine mystery represents an inevitable consequence of improved communication technology and more sophisticated data mining tools, but something valuable disappeared when mythical Pokémon stopped being actual myths and became simply rare Pokémon with special distribution methods. The decision to move away from complex in-game events towards simple code redemptions or automatic distributions via internet connectivity represents another casualty of modernization that prioritizes convenience over memorability and atmosphere. Early events like the member card for Darkrai or the Azure Flute for Arceus created entire side quests with unique locations and storytelling that made obtaining these creatures feel like genuine adventures rather than administrative tasks. Modern distributions largely abandon this approach in favor of efficiency, allowing players to obtain mythical Pokémon quickly and easily, but sacrificing the sense of journey and discovery that made earlier distributions memorable. The trade-off benefits players who want convenience and accessibility, but disappoints those who valued the experiential aspects of earlier event structures. Looking at mythical Pokémon designs chronologically reveals how Game Freak's approach has evolved from the simple, pure concepts of early generations toward increasingly complex and elaborate designs that pack more visual information and thematic elements into each creature. Mew's design conveys its concept through simplicity and balanced proportions, requiring minimal details to communicate primordial origins and genetic potential, while later editions like Magearna or Marshadow incorporate intricate mechanical details, multiple color breaks, and layered visual metaphors that reward close examination. Neither approach is inherently superior, and the variety present across the full roster of mythical Pokémon ensures that different aesthetic preferences find representation, but the general trend toward an increased complexity reflects broader industry movements toward higher fidelity graphics and more detailed character designs. There's a quiet comfort in remembering moments like these when examining the mythical Pokemon roster reveals how Game Freak has experimented with different mythological traditions and conceptual frameworks across multiple cultures and storytelling traditions. Japanese folklore provides inspiration for creatures like Celebi and Shaymin, while Western fantasy influences in form designs like Diancie's crystalline princess aesthetic and Hoopa's Jin mythology connections. This cultural diversity enriches the Pokemon universe by acknowledging that different regions and traditions produce different types of myths and legends, and the decision to draw from multiple sources rather than remaining anchored exclusively in Japanese culture demonstrates the series' evolution into a truly global franchise that embraces varied influences. The relationship between mythical and legendary Pokemon remains somewhat ambiguous, despite official attempts to clarify the distinction, as both categories contain incredibly powerful creatures connected to significant lore and mythology within their respective regions. The practical difference stems primarily from distribution methods rather than inherent power levels or narrative importance, with legendary Pokemon being catchable through normal gameplay, while mythical Pokemon traditionally required external events or distributions. Recent generations have blurred this distinction by making some mythical Pokemon catchable in-game and by creating legendary Pokemon that feel more mysterious and exclusive than some mythical creatures, suggesting that perhaps the categories have outlived their usefulness as meaningful classifications and serve primarily organizational purposes rather than describing fundamental differences between creature types. Some mythical Pokemon possess forms, alternate appearances, or mega evolutions that expand their versatility and provide additional strategic options beyond their base forms, with Deoxys's multiple forms, Hoopa's confined and unbound states, and Diancie's mega evolution offering the most dramatic examples of this mechanical diversity. These transformations often connect to lore, explaining why the creature possesses multiple forms, such as Hoopa's sealing or Shaymin's exposure to Gracidia flowers, creating narrative justifications for mechanical variety rather than treating form changes as purely gameplay mechanics disconnected from story. The integration of transformation mechanics into mythical Pokemon designs demonstrates Game Freak's willingness to experiment with these special creatures as testing grounds for unusual ideas that might not work as well with regular Pokemon subject to breeding and regular evolutionary processes. The signature moves associated with most mythical Pokemon serve multiple purposes beyond simply providing exclusive attacks unique to specific creatures, as these moves often reinforce thematic elements central to each Pokemon's identity and lore while providing mechanical uniqueness that separates them from other creatures with similar typings. Celebi's time manipulation themes connect to no specific signature move, but instead to its ability to travel through time in the lore, while Jirachi's Doom Desire references wish-granting with consequences, and Marshadow's Spectral Thief embodies its concept as an observer who steals techniques. These thoughtful connections between mechanics and themes help mythical Pokemon feel cohesive and well-designed rather than arbitrary collections of stats and moves without deeper meaning, and the best signature moves become inseparable from their users' identities in ways that generic attacks never achieve. As we continue drifting through the history and design of mythical Pokemon, the question of what future additions to this category might look like invites speculation about unexplored mythological traditions and conceptual territories that could inspire new creatures. The series has yet to deeply explore Slavic mythology, pre-Columbian American traditions, or African folklore as primary inspiration sources for mythical Pokémon, suggesting vast reserves of untapped material that could inform future designs if Game Freak chooses to look beyond the Japanese, European, and Middle Eastern traditions that have dominated so far. Similarly, conceptual territories like sound, gravity, or magnetism remain largely unexplored as central themes for mythical creatures, offering potential directions for future editions that would feel fresh while maintaining consistency with established patterns. The economic realities of modern game development and monetization strategies will likely continue influencing how mythical Pokémon are distributed and accessed, with the tension between exclusivity and accessibility remaining a central challenge for Game Freak to navigate. Making these creatures too easy to obtain risks, diminishing their specialness and reducing them to simple checklist items, while keeping them too exclusive, frustrates players who cannot access them due to geographic or economic limitations. The recent trend toward making mythical Pokémon available through in-game events accessible to all players who purchase DLC represents one approach to this problem, creating a purchase barrier that generates revenue while ensuring accessibility to anyone willing to pay the price, regardless of location or event availability. The preservation of older mythical Pokémon as the series advances through additional generations creates ongoing challenges for maintaining cross-generational compatibility and ensuring that players can transfer their collections forward into new games without losing access to creatures they obtained years or even decades earlier. The Pokémon Bank and Pokémon Home cloud storage systems address this need by providing persistent storage that exists outside the individual game cartridges, allowing players to maintain their collections across multiple generations and multiple games without requiring direct transfer compatibility between old and new titles. This approach ensures that mythical Pokémon obtained through time-limited distributions remain accessible to their owners indefinitely, rather than becoming trapped in obsolete games when newer releases arrive, preserving the value of limited-time event participations and respecting the effort players invested in building their collections. Looking back across the complete roster of mythical Pokémon reveals how these creatures have evolved from genuine mysteries that players couldn't confirm existed to expected additions that generate anticipation and speculation before official reveals occur. This transformation from unknown to anticipated represents a fundamental shift in how players relate to these special creatures, as the element of surprise has largely vanished, while excitement about specific designs, typings, and abilities has increased. Modern players approach mythical Pokémon with informed expectations shaped by patterns established across previous generations, predicting likely stat distributions, typing combinations, and design elements based on what has come before. And while this knowledge reduces mystery, it enables more sophisticated appreciation of how each new addition fits into or departs from established traditions. The varying quality and memorability of mythical Pokémon designs demonstrates that not every attempt succeeds equally well at creating creatures that resonate with players and leave lasting impressions. Fan-favorite designs like Mew, Celebi, Darkrai, and Marshadow are frequently celebrated and referenced, while less distinctive creatures like Phione or Zarude generate minimal enthusiasm despite their technical membership in this exclusive category. These quality variations reflect the inherent difficulty of consistently producing excellent character designs across dozens of attempts, and the presence of weaker entries in the mythical roster should not overshadow the genuine brilliance of the category's highlights. The best mythical Pokémon designs achieve that elusive quality where mechanics, aesthetics, lore, and personality coalesce into unified wholes that feel inevitable and perfect, as if these creatures always existed and were merely waiting to be discovered rather than invented through iterative design processes. The connection between mythical Pokémon and the broader themes and narratives of their debut generations varies considerably, with some creatures being deeply integrated into regional lore and storylines, while others feel more peripheral and disconnected from main narratives. Arceus's role as the creator of the universe makes it fundamentally important to understanding the Pokémon world's cosmology, while creatures like Victini or Meloetta could be removed from their respective generations without significantly impacting the overall story or world building. This variation in narrative integration reflects different design philosophies about whether mythical Pokémon should be essential to understanding their regions, or whether they function better as optional extras that reward exploration and engagement without being necessary for main storyline comprehension. The competitive metagame impact of mythical Pokémon has waxed and waned across different generations and tier systems, with some formats banning them entirely due to their mythical status, while others evaluate them individually based on actual power levels and allow weaker mythical creatures to compete in lower tiers. This flexibility in how competitive rule sets handle mythical classification demonstrates that their special status doesn't automatically translate to overwhelming power or meta-warping presence, as many mythical Pokémon possess balanced or even underwhelming statistics that allow them to compete fairly against strong regular Pokémon without dominating through sheer numerical advantages. The most competitively successful mythical Pokémon combine strong stats with excellent typings, useful abilities, and versatile move pools that allow them to fulfill important roles within their respective metagames, while less successful creatures typically suffer from stat distributions that don't support any particular playstyle effectively, or from awkward typing combinations that create more weaknesses than resistances. There's a quiet comfort in remembering moments like these, when the individual mythical Pokémon transcend their gameplay roles to become cultural touchstones that even non-players recognize and associate with the franchise. Mew achieved this status through its mysterious origins and prominent role in the first movie, becoming synonymous with rare and valuable Pokémon in popular consciousness, while creatures like Celebi and Jirachi benefited from movie appearances that exposed them to audiences beyond hardcore players. This cultural penetration helps maintain the franchise's relevance and visibility in broader entertainment landscapes, and mythical Pokémon's roles as marquee creatures for special events and distributions ensure they receive marketing focus and promotional support that keeps them visible even between main game releases. The artistic and creative challenges involved in designing effective mythical Pokémon center on balancing multiple competing requirements simultaneously. These creatures must feel special and exclusive while remaining accessible enough that players can actually obtain and appreciate them. They must be powerful enough to justify their mythical status while not becoming so dominant that they warp competitive balance, and they must possess distinctive designs that stand out from the hundreds of regular Pokémon while still fitting cohesively into the overall aesthetic and world of the series. Successfully navigating these requirements explains why standout mythical designs feel so satisfying and memorable, as they manage to thread needles that seem impossibly narrow while making the results appear effortless and inevitable. The less successful designs typically fail because they prioritize one requirement while neglecting others, creating creatures that feel mechanically sound but aesthetically bland, or visually striking but mechanically awkward, or exclusive but inaccessible in ways that generate frustration rather than appreciation. As we drift into the final stages of this exploration through every mythical Pokémon created across 9 generations of games, the question of what unifies this diverse category becomes increasingly difficult to answer beyond simple mechanical classifications. These creatures share certain patterns, like their 600 base stat totals and event-based distributions, but their themes, designs, typings, and roles vary so dramatically that finding common threads beyond surface-level similarities requires careful examination. Perhaps the truest unifying element involves the special attention and care Game Freak devotes to these creatures during development, treating them as opportunities to explore unusual concepts and push creative boundaries in ways that regular Pokémon, constrained by evolutionary lines and breeding mechanics, cannot accommodate. This creative freedom allows mythical Pokémon to be genuinely experimental and innovative, resulting in the category containing some of the series' most interesting and memorable designs, alongside some of its strangest and most divisive. The future of mythical Pokémon as a category remains uncertain as the series continues evolving and adapting to changing player expectations, technological capabilities, and market conditions. Will future generations continue adding 2 or 3 new mythical creatures per release, or will Game Freak scale back and focus on creating fewer but more thoroughly developed editions? Will distribution methods continue trending toward accessibility and convenience, or will there be renewed appreciation for mystery and exclusivity that characterized earlier eras? These questions lack definitive answers, and the franchise's direction will likely reflect whichever approaches prove most successful at maintaining player engagement and generating revenue while satisfying creative ambitions and honoring the series' history and traditions. What remains clear regardless of future directions is that mythical Pokémon have earned their place as essential elements of the franchise's identity and appeal, representing crystallized versions of the wonder and discovery that have always defined Pokémon at its best. Even as distributions become routine and data mining eliminates surprise, these special creatures maintain their capacity to generate excitement and speculation, and their designs continue inspiring fan art, competitive strategies, and cultural conversations that extend far beyond simple gameplay mechanics. The best mythical Pokémon achieve something approaching genuine mythological status within their fictional universe and in players' minds, becoming the stuff of stories and memories that persist long after specific games become obsolete and move lists are forgotten. Before your eyes grow heavy and rest takes hold completely, consider which mythical Pokémon resonates most strongly with you personally and why certain designs or concepts prove more memorable and meaningful than others. These preferences reveal something about what we value in Pokémon designs and what types of creativity and storytelling connect most effectively with different players, and sharing these preferences helps build communities around mutual appreciation for the series' strengths and accomplishments. The conversation around mythical Pokémon continues evolving as new additions join the roster and as existing creatures receive new forms, moves, or lore through remakes and updates, ensuring that this category remains vital and relevant rather than becoming static museum pieces preserved behind glass. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed drifting through these quiet stories about mythical Pokémon and their place in the franchise's history, there's another video waiting on the left of your screen. Feel free to let it play in the background. You may learn something new as you drift off. Each mythical creature we explored tonight represents years of development effort, countless design iterations, and careful consideration about how to make these special beings feel truly mythical and worthy of their exclusive status. From Mew's last-minute addition during Red and Green's development, through Pecharunt's recent manipulation of the Loyal Three, this category has grown and evolved alongside the franchise itself, adapting to new technologies and player expectations while maintaining core elements that make these creatures recognizable as belonging to this special classification. The mythology surrounding these beings extends beyond their in-game lore into real-world stories about how players obtained them, which distributions were attended, which codes were redeemed, and which events were missed despite best efforts. These personal histories of success and frustration, triumph and disappointment, become part of each player's relationship with mythical Pokémon and shape how we remember and value these creatures years after initial encounters. A Mew obtained by mailing away your cartridge in 1996 carries different emotional weight than one downloaded through Wi-Fi distribution decades later, not because the Mew itself differs in any mechanical way, but because the process of acquisition created different experiences and memories that fundamentally alter the relationship between player and Pokémon. These memories and experiences remind us that games exist not as abstract systems, but as sources of real emotions and genuine connections that shape our lives and perspectives in small but meaningful ways. The mythical Pokémon we cherish most often aren't necessarily the strongest or most competitively viable, but rather those whose acquisition stories or associated memories hold personal significance. The Celebi obtained at your first Pokémon event with childhood friends, the Darkrai that helped you finally complete your Sinnoh Pokédex, the Victini that carried your team through a difficult playthrough during a challenging period in your life. These connections transform mythical Pokémon from collections of stats and pixels into repositories of meaning and emotion that we return to across years and decades, finding comfort and nostalgia in their familiar designs and remembering who we were when we first encountered them and how far we've traveled since those early days of wonder and discovery. This technical implementation of mythical Pokémon within the game's code reveals fascinating details about how Game Freak programmed these special creatures to function differently from regular Pokémon in subtle but important ways. Most mythical Pokémon carry specific flags in their data that prevent them from being traded over certain systems like the Global Trade Station or Wonder Trade, ensuring that their special status remains protected and that casual players cannot accidentally trade away these valuable creatures without understanding what they're giving up. These programming restrictions extend to breeding mechanics as well, with most mythical Pokémon being classified as part of the undiscovered egg group that prevents them from producing offspring even when paired with Ditto in the daycare. The sole exception to this breeding restriction, Manaphy's ability to produce Phione eggs, stands out specifically because it breaks the established pattern in ways that create interesting questions about why this particular exception exists and what it means for understanding mythical Pokémon biology within the fiction. The animation work devoted to mythical Pokémon throughout the various animated series and films demonstrates the care and attention these creatures receive beyond their game appearances, as animators and character designers must translate static sprites and 3D models into fluid, expressive characters capable of carrying emotional scenes and action sequences. The first Pokémon movie's depiction of Mew established many of the visual and behavioral templates that would inform later mythical Pokémon appearances, showing how a small, childlike creature could convey power, wisdom, playfulness, and melancholy through subtle movements and expressions. This animation philosophy of treating mythical Pokémon as characters rather than just monsters influenced how subsequent films approached their featured mythical creatures, giving each one distinct personality traits and mannerisms that helped audiences connect emotionally with beings that might otherwise feel distant or abstract. The merchandise and promotional materials surrounding mythical Pokémon reveal how these creatures function as valuable intellectual property beyond their roles in games and media, appearing on countless products ranging from plush toys and trading cards to clothing and accessories marketed to players across all age ranges. The commercial success of mythical Pokemon merchandise demonstrates that these creatures possess strong brand recognition and consumer appeal, justifying the continued investment in creating and promoting new additions to the category. Limited edition merchandise tied to specific distributions or events creates additional collectability and value, transforming physical products into commemorations of specific moments in the franchise's history that resonate with fans seeking tangible connections to their favorite games and characters. The translation challenges involved in localizing mythical Pokemon names across different languages and regions highlight the complexity of maintaining consistent identities while adapting to linguistic and cultural differences that affect how concepts and wordplay function in various contexts. Names like Jirachi or Celebi work well across multiple languages because they derive from relatively universal concepts or coined words rather than language-specific puns, while others require more extensive adaptation to preserve intended meanings or associations. Pecharunt's different names in English and Japanese represent the most extreme example of translation divergence among mythical Pokemon, with the two names sharing conceptual connections through peach imagery but sounding completely different and requiring separate explanations to understand their etymology and significance. The musical themes composed for mythical Pokemon encounters throughout the series create atmospheric soundscapes that reinforce the special nature of these battles while distinguishing them from regular wild encounters or even legendary battles. These compositions typically emphasize mystery, wonder, and significance through specific instrumental choices and melodic structures that make mythical encounters feel appropriately momentous. The Sinjo Ruins theme that plays during the Arceus event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver exemplifies this approach perfectly, combining ethereal vocals, ancient-sounding instrumentation, and building tension to create an audio experience that matches the narrative weight of witnessing the creation of a legendary Pokemon by the universe's creator deity. These musical moments become inseparable from the experience of encountering mythical Pokemon, embedding themselves in player memory alongside visual and gameplay elements to create cohesive impressions that last long after individual play sessions end. The trading card game's treatment of mythical Pokemon demonstrates how these creatures translate into different gameplay systems with entirely different mechanical requirements and strategic considerations. Card versions of mythical Pokemon typically receive special card types, unique abilities, or powerful attacks that justify their rarity and collectability within the TCG ecosystem, though the specific implementation varies significantly between different card expansions and design philosophies. Some mythical Pokemon cards become centerpieces of competitive decks that dominate tournament play, while others serve primarily as collectibles that appeal to completionists and fans of specific creatures, despite lacking strong competitive applications. This variation in competitive viability mirrors the main series games, where some mythical Pokemon dominate their respective metagames, while others languish in obscurity despite their special status. The spin-off games' implementations of mythical Pokemon create opportunities to explore these creatures and genres and gameplay styles that differ dramatically from the main series, allowing new perspectives on familiar characters and mechanics. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon's approach to mythical Pokemon often integrates them deeply into storylines as characters with dialogue, motivations, and character arcs that develop across multiple games and appearances. This narrative-focused approach transforms mythical Pokemon from mysterious beings that players encounter briefly into fully realized characters whose personalities and relationships drive plot developments and emotional beats. The Darkrai arc in Explorers of Time and Darkness exemplifies this approach by making Darkrai a complex antagonist whose actions stem from understandable motivations and whose defeat feels tragic despite the necessity of stopping its plans. The data mining communities that emerge around each new Pokemon generation serve both as sources of early information about upcoming mythical Pokemon and as archives that preserve details about cut content, unused designs, and abandoned mechanics that official sources never intended for public viewing. These communities' efforts have revealed fascinating information about how mythical Pokemon designs evolved during development, showing early concept art and prototype models that differ significantly from final released versions. The balance between respecting Game Freak's intentions to keep certain information secret and satisfying player curiosity about development processes creates ongoing tensions within fan communities, with some players preferring to experience reveals organically through official channels, while others eagerly consume any available leaked information to stay maximally informed. The preservation efforts devoted to maintaining access to mythical Pokemon from earlier generations demonstrate player dedication to keeping these creatures available and transferable across multiple console generations, despite technical limitations and service discontinuations. The closure of Nintendo Wi-Fi connection for DS and Wii games in 2014 threatened to strand countless mythical Pokemon in obsolete games without transfer methods, until the Pokemon Bank system provided bridges, allowing players to move creatures forward into newer titles. These preservation concerns will continue emerging as technology advances and older hardware becomes obsolete, requiring ongoing solutions to prevent rare and valuable Pokemon obtained through time-limited distributions from becoming permanently trapped in unplayable games. The ethical dimensions of mythical Pokemon distributions intersect with questions about accessibility, fairness, and the role of exclusive content in commercial entertainment products. Limiting access to certain Pokemon through geographic restrictions or time-limited events creates inevitable situations where some players cannot obtain specific creatures despite wanting them and being willing to invest time and effort. This exclusivity serves business purposes by driving engagement during specific windows and creating scarcity that increases perceived value, but it also generates frustration and disappointment among players who miss distributions through no fault of their own. The recent trend toward more permanent availability through in-game events represents one approach to resolving these tensions, though it comes with trade-offs in terms of the special feeling that scarcity and exclusivity create. The relationship between mythical Pokemon rarity and competitive balance creates interesting design challenges around whether these special creatures should be stronger than regular Pokemon to justify their exclusive status, or whether they should be balanced to allow fair competition regardless of access to limited distribution creatures. Modern competitive Pokemon generally follows the second philosophy, with most official formats either banning mythical Pokemon entirely or evaluating them individually based on power level rather than automatic exclusion based on classification. This approach ensures that competitive success depends on skill and strategy rather than simply who has access to the rarest Pokemon, though it does mean that some mythical creatures feel disappointingly average in terms of actual battle performance compared to their lore suggesting incredible power. The fan theories and speculation that surround mythical Pokemon demonstrate how these creatures inspire creative interpretation and analysis beyond what official sources explicitly provide, with players constructing elaborate explanations for design choices, lore connections, and mechanical decisions based on careful observation and pattern recognition. Some theories prove remarkably prescient, predicting design elements or lore connections that later official sources confirm, while others remain purely speculative constructs that help fans make sense of ambiguous or incomplete information. This creative engagement enriches the experience of following the franchise across multiple releases and helps maintain interest during gaps between major announcements or game releases. The generational power creep that affects regular Pokemon extends to mythical creatures as well, with newer editions generally receiving more sophisticated abilities, signature moves with additional effects, and stat distributions optimized for specific roles rather than the balanced spreads that characterized early generations. This evolution reflects both Game Freak's growing understanding of competitive balance and the need to make new additions feel fresh and exciting compared to existing options. Comparing early mythical Pokemon like Mew or Celebi with recent additions like Marshadow or Pecharunt reveals how much more mechanically complex and specialized later designs have become, though whether this increased complexity represents improvement or simply difference remains a matter of personal preference and depends on what qualities players value most in Pokemon design. The symbolic meanings players attach to specific mythical Pokemon often extend beyond their official lore into personal associations based on when and how they encountered these creatures in their own lives. A Darkrai obtained during a difficult period might come to represent overcoming personal nightmares and struggles, while a Jirachi received during a hopeful time could symbolize wishes made and dreams pursued. These personal mythologies that develop around mythical Pokemon transform them into more than just game characters, making them meaningful symbols that carry emotional weight and psychological significance beyond their intended roles within the fiction. The malleability of these creatures as symbols allows different players to find different meanings in the same designs, ensuring that mythical Pokemon remain personally relevant across diverse audiences with varied backgrounds and experiences. The photography mechanics introduced in recent Pokemon games create new ways to interact with and appreciate mythical Pokemon beyond traditional battling and collection, allowing players to compose artistic screenshots that showcase these creatures in various environments and poses. The new Pokemon Snap title, dedicated to photography, transformed mythical Pokemon from battle-focused creatures into subjects for artistic expression, with players working to capture perfect images showing interesting behaviors or beautiful compositions. This shift in focus from combat to observation aligns well with the mysterious, special nature of mythical Pokemon, suggesting that sometimes the most meaningful interaction with rare and powerful creatures involves simply witnessing and appreciating them rather than controlling or battling them. The unofficial fan games and ROM hacks that incorporate mythical Pokemon demonstrate how these creatures inspire creative works beyond official releases, with fan developers creating their own events, storylines, and distribution methods that often reflect what they wish in official games had done with these special creatures. Some fan projects focus on making mythical Pokemon more accessible through standard gameplay rather than events, while others create elaborate quest lines and challenges that make obtaining these creatures feel like earned achievements rather than gifts. These unofficial projects exist in legal gray areas, but demonstrate the passion and creativity these special creatures inspire among dedicated fans willing to invest significant time and effort into celebrating and reimagining how mythical Pokemon could function within Pokemon games. The speedrunning communities that form around Pokemon games generally treat mythical Pokemon as out of bounds for standard completion categories, since obtaining them requires external events rather than in-game actions. This classification makes sense from a competitive standpoint since runners cannot reliably access these creatures during attempts, but it also means that mythical Pokemon rarely feature in speedrun routes or strategies despite potentially offering powerful tools for sequence breaking or battle optimization. The few categories that do allow mythical Pokémon typically create special rules acknowledging their unusual status, and runs utilizing these creatures often become exhibition content rather than competitive attempts due to the difficulty of obtaining legitimate event Pokémon for use in recorded runs. The crossover appearances of mythical Pokémon in games outside the main Pokémon franchise extend their reach into broader gaming contexts and expose them to audiences who might not engage deeply with traditional Pokémon games. Super Smash Bros.' inclusion of Mew as a rare Pokeball summon and later additions like Celebi and Jirachi expose these creatures to fighting game communities, while mobile games like Pokemon Go bring mythical Pokemon to casual audiences through special research quests and limited time events. These crossover appearances must balance respecting the special nature of mythical creatures with making them accessible enough that players in these other games can reasonably hope to encounter or use them, creating implementation challenges that vary depending on each game's specific mechanics and audience expectations. The philosophical questions raised by mythical Pokémon about creation, consciousness, time, and reality invite deeper analysis than typical monster collection games usually encourage, with creatures like Arceus, Celebi, and Mew embodying concepts that have occupied human philosophers and theologians for millennia. Arceus, as creator deity, raises questions about divine nature and the relationship between creator and creation, while Celebi's time travel abilities prompt consideration of causality and temporal paradoxes. These deeper implications mostly remain subtext rather than explicit focus within the games themselves, but attentive players can extract surprising philosophical depth from lore surrounding these special creatures if they choose to engage with these themes rather than simply treating mythical Pokémon as powerful battlers or collection objectives. The community-building aspects of mythical Pokémon distributions create social experiences that strengthen player connections and generate shared experiences that bind fan communities together across geographic and demographic boundaries. Attending events together, sharing distribution codes, helping friends complete collections, and discussing the latest additions all serve as social glue that keeps communities engaged and active between major game releases. Online communities facilitate these connections on larger scales, with players from different regions trading to help each other complete collections or sharing information about upcoming distributions and optimal strategies for using mythical Pokémon in various contexts. These social dimensions transform mythical Pokémon from individual possessions into community resources that create value through sharing and collective engagement. The statistical analysis that competitive players conduct on mythical Pokémon usage rates, win percentages, and team compositions reveals fascinating patterns about which creatures prove most effective in practice versus which generate most hype during initial reveals. Some mythical Pokémon, like Mew and Marshadow, maintain consistent competitive relevance across multiple generations and format changes, demonstrating well-designed core concepts that remain effective despite evolving metagames. Others experience brief periods of dominance before falling into obscurity as counters emerge or power creep makes their stats and move pools feel inadequate. Tracking these usage patterns across time provides insights into what makes Pokémon designs succeed or fail in competitive contexts beyond simple power level considerations, highlighting importance of typing, ability, move pool diversity, and stat distribution in determining practical viability. The environmental storytelling used in some mythical Pokémon encounter locations creates atmosphere and context that enriches these special battles beyond simple mechanical challenges, with locations like New Moon Island for Darkrai or the flower paradise for Shaymin, using visual design and environmental details to reinforce each creature's themes and lore. These specially designed locations become memorable in their own right as much as the Pokemon themselves, creating complete experiences that combine music, visuals, and gameplay into cohesive wholes that stick in the player memory long after the encounters conclude. The trend in recent games towards simpler distribution methods that deliver mythical Pokemon directly without unique locations or environmental storytelling represents a loss of this atmospheric richness, trading experiential depth for logistical convenience in ways that benefit accessibility while sacrificing memorability. The parallel evolution of mythical Pokemon design philosophy alongside broader gaming industry trends toward accessibility, service games, and digital distribution demonstrates how even specialized elements like these special creatures must adapt to changing markets and player expectations. Early distributions requiring physical attendance at specific retailers made sense in an era before ubiquitous internet connectivity, while modern Wi-Fi distributions and download codes reflect current infrastructure and player habits. Future distributions will likely continue evolving alongside technology, potentially incorporating mobile app integration, augmented reality components, or other emerging technologies as they become mainstream. These adaptations ensure mythical Pokemon remain relevant and accessible while maintaining enough special quality to justify their continued existence as a distinct category. The artistic interpretations of mythical Pokemon created by fan artists throughout the franchise's history demonstrate these creatures' capacity to inspire creative expression across various media and styles, with countless illustrations, sculptures, animations, and other artworks celebrating favorite designs or reimagining them through different aesthetic lenses. This fan creativity enriches the broader Pokemon community by providing alternative perspectives on familiar creatures and demonstrating diverse ways these characters can be interpreted and appreciated. The most successful mythical Pokemon designs prove versatile enough to support wide ranges of artistic interpretation while maintaining recognizable core elements that make them identifiable across different styles and approaches. The nostalgia that longtime players feel toward early mythical Pokemon reflects both genuine appreciation for well-executed designs and the psychological tendency to favor things encountered during formative years when impressions form most strongly. Players who grew up with generations 1 through 4 often express particular fondness for Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, and Darkrai regardless of these creatures' objective quality compared to later additions, demonstrating how emotional connections formed during childhood or adolescence color adult perceptions and preferences. This nostalgic attachment doesn't diminish the genuine quality of these early designs, but it does suggest that attempts to objectively rank or compare mythical Pokemon across generations must account for personal history and emotional resonance alongside purely aesthetic or mechanical considerations. The balance between respecting established lore and allowing creative freedom for new additions creates ongoing tensions in mythical Pokemon design, as each new creature must fit coherently into existing mythology while bringing something fresh that justifies its inclusion rather than feeling redundant or contradictory. The introduction of Pecharunt as a poison-type manipulator existing alongside Darkrai's nightmare abilities demonstrates how multiple creatures can occupy similar thematic space, control, and mental influence while remaining distinct through specific implementations and different underlying mechanics. Maintaining this careful balance across dozens of mythical Pokemon without creating contradictions or redundancy requires careful planning and willingness to explore nuanced variations on broader themes, rather than simply repeating successful formulas with minor modifications. As this exploration of mythical Pokemon draws toward its natural conclusion, the accumulated weight of information and analysis reveals both the remarkable consistency and surprising diversity present throughout this special category. From the earliest mysterious additions that players weren't certain existed to modern implementations that balance accessibility with maintaining special qualities, mythical Pokemon have adapted and evolved alongside the franchise while retaining core elements that make them recognizable as belonging to this exclusive classification. The best examples achieve that rare quality where every element, design, lore, mechanics, distribution method, supports and reinforces the others, creating unified wholes that feel inevitable and perfect, despite the countless decisions and iterations required to reach final forms. The future of this category remains open and full of possibility, with potential directions ranging from doubling down on accessibility and integration into main stories to returning toward earlier philosophies of mystery and scarcity that made obtaining these creatures feel genuinely special and meaningful. Whatever approaches Game Freak chooses, the legacy established by decades of mythical Pokemon creates both foundation and context that will inform and constrain future designs, ensuring that new additions engage with and respond to what came before rather than existing in isolation. This continuity across generations helps maintain franchise coherence while allowing enough flexibility that each new addition can surprise and delight in unexpected ways. The personal connections that individual players form with specific mythical Pokemon ultimately matter more than any objective analysis of design quality or competitive viability, as these emotional bonds transform digital creatures into meaningful presences that enrich lives and provide comfort across years and decades. Whether your favorite is Mew or Marshadow, Celebi or Pecharunt, Jirachi or Zeraora, that preference reflects something meaningful about your personal history with the franchise and what elements of Pokemon design and philosophy resonate most strongly with your individual sensibilities. Celebrating these personal favorites while appreciating what makes other players' choices meaningful to them creates communities built on mutual respect and shared passion, rather than hierarchies based on supposedly objective quality rankings. These mysterious creatures that began as playground rumors and developer secrets have evolved into established franchise elements that new players expect and anticipate, transforming from genuine myths into expected traditions while somehow maintaining enough special quality to remain distinct from regular Pokemon. This transformation reflects the broader evolution of gaming culture, from isolated local experiences toward connected global communities where information spreads instantly and mystery becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. The challenge for future mythical Pokemon involves finding new ways to feel special and exclusive in an environment where nothing stays secret and accessibility takes precedence over scarcity, creating value through excellent design and meaningful integration rather than relying purely on limited availability to generate appeal. The deeper examination of individual mythical Pokemon reveals layers of meaning and intentionality that casual observation might miss, as each creature's design incorporates subtle references and thoughtful details that reward close attention and careful analysis. Mew's translucent appearance in certain artwork suggests ethereal existence between physical and spiritual planes, while the curved tail shape references both feline anatomy and the double helix structure of DNA molecules. These small touches demonstrate how Game Freak designers work to ensure every visual element supports and reinforces the broader conceptual framework underlying each mythical Pokemon's identity, creating designs that function both as immediately appealing characters and as repositories of layered symbolism that reveals itself gradually through prolonged engagement. The evolution of mythical Pokémon shiny colorations across generations shows increasing sophistication in how alternate palettes are conceived and implemented, moving from simple hue shifts in early generations toward more thoughtful reimaginings that maintain design coherence while providing distinctly different visual experiences. Celebi's pink shiny coloration transforms it from a forest guardian into something that resembles cherry blossoms, or perhaps spring itself, while Darkray's purple to white shiny transformation inverts its nightmare associations to suggest dreams and light rather than darkness and fear. These carefully considered alternate colorations add replayability and collection goals for dedicated players while demonstrating attention to detail that extends even to content. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed drifting through these quiet facts, there's another video waiting on the left of your screen. Maybe let it play while you rest. You might learn something new before you drift off again.